Have you ever found yourself right in the middle of a super complex English conversation where you're expressing your thoughts perfectly well, but you still have this nagging feeling of frustration? Like, you absolutely know people understand you, but you also know you just don't sound quite like a native speaker? Well, you've hit what we call the advanced language plateau. It's incredibly common, and honestly, it's just really frustrating. But in today's explainer, we are going to completely demystify that exact jump. We're going to talk about moving from simply being understood to actually wielding true native-level C2 control. We're going to break down the exact mechanics of English nuance, precision, and tone control.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. We'll start with the communication plateau, then move on to fixing sentence architecture, escaping the textbook trap, precision and tone control, and finally wrap up with the path to mastery.
Part 1. The Communication Plateau. So, let's start right at the beginning. For a lot of you tuning in, your weakness definitely isn't a lack of ideas. You can easily discuss complex topics like politics, economics, or tech without missing a beat. And honestly, that is a massive achievement. It means you aren't an intermediate learner anymore. But as you hit this advanced plateau, there's a really specific distinction we need to make. Your main problem right now is not communication. It's naturalness. You are communicating clearly, for sure. The message is landing. But true native-level C2 English requires so much more than just being understood. It needs automatic grammar, a completely natural flow of words, and most importantly, precise tone.
Think about what's actually happening in your head. When you translate your native logic, say using a Portuguese or Spanish thought structure, and then just fill that structure with English words, your sentences end up feeling really heavy. This is so common for strong learners. Your brain produces the meaning using your native language's logic first, but unlocking C1 and C2 means completely bypassing that translation step. You literally have to start producing the ideas directly inside an English structure. And this leads to a pretty fascinating dynamic. A lot of learners end up with a B2 speaking ability, but a C1 or even C2 intellectual range. Basically, your intellectual range, your complex thoughts and deep arguments, actually outpaces your English phrasing. That gap right there is the plateau. To bridge it, your immediate targets aren't, memorizing more giant vocabulary words. Your actual targets are accuracy, naturalness, and concision.
Which brings us to part 2, fixing sentence architecture. To fix the mechanical bugs anchoring you to that plateau, we really need to look under the hood. Now, you absolutely cannot fix everything at once. It's overwhelming and frankly, it's inefficient. You need a targeted syllabus. Priority 1 is question formation. 2 is collocations. 3 is articles. And 4 is subject-verb agreement. If you focus on fixing just these 4 structural pillars, your naturalness will literally skyrocket. Let's break a couple of these down.
Let's look at priority number 1, question formation. A B2 learner might naturally say something like, based on our conversation, what level I'm at, right? It's totally understandable, but you can feel that it's translated. A native speaker naturally builds questions using a very strict, almost mathematical pattern, question word plus auxiliary or modal plus subject plus main verb. So it becomes, what level would you place me at? Or, what do top students focus on? Mastering this pattern is absolutely mandatory for native-like fluidity.
Next up, we have collocations. Advanced speakers don't just know advanced grammar. They intuitively know which words naturally belong together. You don't do a test in natural American English, you take a test. You don't say you want to arrive at C2, you want to reach C2. True idiomatic control means memorizing these chunks of words as single units, rather than trying to assemble them word by word on the fly. It's all about the phrasing.
And this next point highlights our third priority brilliantly: articles. There is a hugely important rule in English that trips up almost every single advanced learner. When speaking generally, English often uses plural nouns without the word the. So instead of saying, the people want safety, a native speaker simply says, people want safety. Instead of the immigrants face challenges, it's just immigrants face challenges. It's a tiny, tiny tweak, but I promise you, it makes your sentences immediately sound lighter and way more authentic.
Part 3, escaping the textbook trap.
If you've learned English primarily from formal study, you might have fallen into the formality trap. Actually, scratch that. You probably sound a bit like a 19th century aristocrat without even realizing it. Consider this textbook sentence. I've spent a lot of time reading textbooks, but I don't have native speakers around me to practice with. It's perfectly correct grammar, but it's so heavy.
Now listen to the native casual version. Most of my English comes from books, so I don't get much real-life conversation practice. It's just cleaner. It's highly conversational. Learning exclusively from books gives you incredible vocabulary, but it almost always creates unnatural heavy phrasing in spoken conversation.
So, the big takeaway here? The real C1 move is less weight, more precision. Native speakers often prefer shorter, cleaner sentences. We don't try to cram 10 complex grammar structures into a single breath. We make our speaking smoother by shedding all that unnecessary weight.
Moving on to part 4, precision and tone control.
This right here is the absolute core focus of today's explainer. Getting to C2 isn't just about knowing rare, obscure vocabulary. It's about mastering exactly how you sound. Think about it for a second. What is truly keeping you from C2 right now? If your grammar is solid and your vocabulary is massive, what's the final boss? Well, the final boss of English mastery is tone control. It's your ability to navigate sensitive, academic, or highly casual topics with the exact right emotional temperature.
To pull that off, you need a specific toolkit. You need precision, nuance, idiomatic control, and tone mastery. Look, if you were discussing a controversial topic, like politics or society, a direct translation from your native language might end up sounding overly blunt or aggressive in English, even if you absolutely don't mean it to be. C2 mastery means you have the linguistic flexibility to soften your language, sound diplomatic, and convey those really subtle nuances.
Let's say we are discussing a complex social issue. A translated B2 thought might just be blunt force. Those guys cause problems. It's understandable, sure, but it completely lacks depth. A C2 speaker, on the other hand, uses nuance. They might say, some individuals may fail to engage, and governments need to address that firmly. Notice how mature and academically strong that phrasing is? It uses precision rather than bluntness. That is what true tone mastery looks like.
Finally, part 5, the path to mastery.
So how do we actually achieve this? The fastest way forward isn't locking yourself in a room with a 500-page grammar book. You need a rewiring daily habit, something called conversion practice. This is where you actively take one sentence you'd normally say and you consciously transform it.
Let's walk through this 3-tier process together. Step 1 is what you might naturally say. I need to know what I have to fix in my speaking. Right, it's grammatically correct. Step 2 pushes it to be more natural. I need to know what I should improve in my spoken English. Better. But step 3 is where you finally unlock that C2 idiomatic flexibility, the native casual version. I need to know what's holding my speaking back. By forcing your brain through these 3 steps every single day, you're actively rewiring your language habits away from translation and directly toward native intuition.
If you take only one single thing away from this explainer today, please let it be this: not bigger words, better patterns. Your intellectual range is already there. Stop trying to memorize massive dictionary words and start mimicking the elegant patterns native speakers use to build their ideas.
It's a completely different way of looking at language learning, isn't it? The plateau you're feeling, it isn't a wall. It's just a sign that you need to shift your strategy. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Are you ready to stop translating and start building the patterns that will finally unlock C2? Grab one sentence you use today and start your conversion practice right now. Thanks so much for learning with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.